Open Individualism and the Afterlife. Afterlife prediction: you live wherever there is life. Open Individualism, like other theories of personal identity, aims to answer the question, which experiences belong to which persons. The theory of open individualism was first proposed in 1990 by Arnold Zuboff, and expanded upon in a 2004 book by Daniel Kolak. But, the idea had adherents among scientists going back decades. The common-sense view of personal identity is that each person is identified by either the material continuation of some body, or the psychological continuation of some mind. In this way we can say a person at age 80 is ultimately the same person as when they were 10. But this common-sense view breaks down when we consider less common situations. Cases like split brains, cloning, merging memories, fusing minds, duplication machines, faulty transporters, and amnesia. If we create several identical copies of a person, which does the original become? One of them? All of them? None of them? These situations reveal that the common-sense view, which Kolak calls closed individualism, leads to inconsistencies and therefore must be false. But if the common-sense view is wrong, what's the alternative? According to open individualism, you, quote, possess all conscious life. Whenever in all time and wherever in all the universe, or beyond, any conscious being stands, sits, crawls, jumps, lies, rolls, flies or swims, its experience of doing so is yours and is yours now. You are that being. You are fish and fowl, deer and hunter. You are saints and sinners. End quote. Arnold Zuboff in Oneself, The Logic of Experience, 1990. If closed individualism is false, it leads to open individualism. This is the idea that there is only one experiencer to which all experiences belong. Quote, this is also the resolution of the tension between the rival criteria for personal identity, psychological and bodily continuity. As with brain bisection, there is here an embarrassment of riches. Either side of the classic debate has the upper hand when it argues positively that the person could remain the same if its own pet criterion was maintained even if the other was wholly absent. And, indeed, one could easily imagine a person going along into another body with a transfer to that body's brain of his pattern of memories. And yet one can also easily imagine the persons continuing in the same body with an experience of amnesia or false memories. It seems that all such content of experience, in different bodies or with differing mental states, could be mine. End quote. Arnold Zuboff in Oneself, The Logic of Experience, 1990. Quote, the traditional, common-sense view that we are each a separate person numerically identical to ourselves over time, i.e., that personal identity is closed under known individuating, and identifying borders, what the author calls closed individualism, is shown to be incoherent. The demonstration that personal identity is not closed but open points collectively in one of two new directions: either there are no continuously existing, self-identical persons over time in the sense ordinarily understood, the sort of view developed by philosophers as diverse as Buddha, Hume and most recently Derek Parfit, what the author calls empty individualism, or else you are everyone, i.e., personal identity is not closed under known individuating, and identifying borders, what the author calls open individualism. End quote. Daniel Kolak in I Am You, The Metaphysical Foundations for Global Ethics, 2004. If there is just one experiencer, a single person who possesses all conscious experience, then it has major implications for the afterlife. Open individualism's predictions for the afterlife. What were the preconditions necessary for you to be born, for you to be blessed with life and consciousness? Did it require specific atoms in your first cell, or would any atoms do? Did it require specific genes, or might you still be alive if your eyes were a different color? Open individualism supposes that there are no necessary preconditions. That regardless of the material, or genes, or even parents, you would be born and you would experience life. But then it follows from this that you must also experience the lives of every being, born anywhere to any parents. At first, this sounds ridiculous on its face. Surely we would know if we also experienced the lives of others. Wouldn't we? Things are not so clear. Even in our own lives we have experiences that we no longer remember. Someone had the vivid experience of eating that breakfast you had 2,471 days ago, an experience you probably can't recall anything about from your present vantage point. Might it be the same with the experiences of other lives? Many thinkers have independently come to this view. These include eminent scientists such as the founder of quantum mechanics Erwin Schrödinger, the astronomer who solved the formation of the elements in stars Fred Hoyle, the polymath Freeman Dyson, and Kurt Gödel, considered the greatest logician since Aristotle. If they're right, then all conscious life is you. All experiences are yours. Quote, "Inconceivable as it seems to ordinary reason, you, and all other conscious beings as such, are all in all. Hence this life of yours which you are living is not merely a piece of the entire existence, but is in a certain sense the whole, only this whole is not so constituted that it can be surveyed in one single glance." End quote. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger in My View of the World, 1951. Quote, "Enlightenment came to me suddenly and unexpectedly one afternoon in March when I was walking up to the school notice board to see whether my name was on the list for tomorrow's football game. I was not on the list. And in a blinding flash of inner light I saw the answer to both my problems, the problem of war and the problem of injustice. The answer was amazingly simple. I called it cosmic unity. Cosmic unity said, there is only one of us. We are all the same person. I am you and I am Winston Churchill and Hitler and Gandhi and everybody. There is no problem of injustice because your sufferings are also mine. There will be no problem of war as soon as you understand that in killing me you are only killing yourself." End quote. Freeman Dyson in Disturbing the Universe, 1979. If open individualism is right, the implications are astounding. Every building you see, you have lived the lives of everyone who built it. You have lived as all of your ancestors, and all your descendants, as all the rulers of the world, and all the peasants. You are every creature that has swum, crawled, or flown on this planet or any other. Open individualism teaches us we ought to regard others as self. It thereby provides an ethical framework not unlike teachings found in many religions. We should also be more understanding of others, for not only would we act the same way in their shoes, but we are in fact in their shoes and we did choose to act that way. The idea that all consciousness is of a single consciousness is ancient. It appears explicitly in the religions of Hinduism and Buddhism. Quote, "The calm yogis, who are of purified intellect, and who control the mind and senses, see the soul of all souls in every living being." End quote. The Bhagavad Gita chapter 5 verse 7, circa 200 BC. Quote, "The root of all things is nothing else but oneself." End quote. Samantabhadra Buddha, in the Kilai Tantra of Tibetan Buddhism. Quote, "Based upon the direct experience of those who have fulfilled the necessary conditions of such knowledge, this teaching is expressed most succinctly in the Sanskrit formula, Tat Tvmrc, that art thou, the Atman, or immanent eternal self, is one with Brahman, the absolute principle of all existence, and the last end of every human being is to discover the fact for himself, to find out who he really is." End quote. Aldous Huxley in The Perennial Philosophy, 1946. The realization of seeing the self in others, forms the basis of the nearly universal golden rule. Quote, "That which you hate to be done to you, do not do to another." End quote. Papyrus scrolls found in ancient Egypt, 664 to 323 BC. Quote, "Killing a living being is killing one's own self, showing compassion to a living being is showing compassion to oneself." End quote. The Saman Suttam verse 151. Quote, "Love your neighbor as yourself." End quote. Book of Leviticus chapter 19 verse 18. Quote, "The most righteous person is the one who consents for other people what he consents for himself, and who dislikes for them what he dislikes for himself." End quote. Muhammad in the Hadith. Quote, "Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss." End quote. The Taoist scripture Tai Shang Kenying Pian, 12th century. Zuboff concludes in oneself, perhaps the spread of this knowledge among the intelligent beings that are you can help you to stop yourself from hurting yourself because you mistake yourself for another. Huxley's perennial philosophy concludes, the goal of creation is the return of all sentient beings out of separateness and that infatuating urge to separateness which results in suffering, through unitive knowledge, into the wholeness of eternal reality. According to Open Individualism, you cannot die so long as there is life anywhere in reality. For every living being, everywhere, is you. So if Open Individualism is true, you live wherever there is life. You are the universal person and the one self of experience. For more on Open Individualism, see, Why Was I Born? And Is There a Universal Ethical or Moral System?